Right. This video is just going to be a short video on this topic, that the 144,000 and the Bride of Christ are the same group of people. They are also the two witnesses, but I'm not going to go into that particular aspect in this video. This one is just about proving that the Bride of Christ and the 144,000 are the same people group. So this is just going to be a short video on this topic, and for more in-depth studies into it, I'll provide links back to videos that I've made on these subjects before. But before I produce my evidence, I need to just make some points so that we fully understand just exactly who it is that I'm talking about. Now, the Bride of Christ, that terminology doesn't exactly occur in the Bible. The terminology is literally the bride of the Lamb. But I think that we understand, if I use that terminology, the Bride of Christ, we understand who it is, because I've used it many times in many videos. So the first point I need to make is that the Bride of Christ is not the whole body of Christ. Many are called, but few are chosen. The bride is only those that have engaged actively in their sanctification process and have allowed or is allowing God to transform them into the image of his Son, Jesus Christ. There are many who play this game and are very religious, but there are very few I have come to understand who have or are actually totally devoting their lives to this work. The work of religion is not the work of transformation. The bride is often found hidden away, set apart from the world and from false religious environments, and is rather devoted solely to ministering privately to the Lord. It is not likely that the bride would have a very public ministry. The bride belongs to Jesus, not the world. The work of the Levitical priesthood in the Old Testament was to minister to the Lord in the holy place. They were considered holy, set apart from the world, and sanctified solely for the work of God. And they also had to be descendants of Aaron. Now, the priests that served in the outer court were not sanctified. They were not considered holy, and they didn't have to be descendants of Aaron. They were not set apart for God's holy work. They did not minister to God. They ministered to the people. The bride of Christ ministers to the Lord. The only real ministry they had with people was in teaching the people about holiness. The second point I want to make is that the 144,000 is not a group of young virgin male Jews. This is taken as a literal translation from the book of Revelation in chapter 14. In the very first verse of the book of Revelations, right, chapter 1, verse 1, it says, "The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants, things which must shortly take place, and he sent and signified it by his angel to his servant John." Now, signified means sent in symbols. The book of Revelation is a message that Jesus sends his bride in symbols. Now, why would he send it in symbols rather than literally? Well, why did he speak to the multitudes in parables and not speak plainly to them? As Jesus constantly says to the churches, let him who has ears hear what the Spirit is saying. Only those that really care, those that are truly devoted followers of Jesus, will be shown the true meanings. If you're not really interested in the truth, then the truth will remain hidden from you. After Jesus spoke to the multitude in parables, he would later then sit down and explain the meanings of the parables to his true disciples. The 144,000 are not Jews, although there will be some Jews among them. They are all the true disciples of Jesus Christ, those that lean their head on his breast to listen to what the truth is in his heart. If you still insist on the literal interpretation of the book of Revelations, then you cannot hear what the Spirit is saying. The truth will remain hidden from you. And it's also obvious then that you're not interested in an intimate, wedded relationship with him. Religion is your lover. The third point I want to make is the 144,000 is not a literal number. This is their name, not their numbers. The 144,000 is a pronoun, not a quantitative amount of people. God is going to change the name of his people. In the new millennial, they will not be called Christians, but they will be known as the bride, and the bride will be the 144,000. It says in Revelations 14 that these are the ones who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These were redeemed from among men, being firstfruits to God and to the Lamb. Now, redeemed can talk about a one-time event, or it can also talk about an ongoing process. And there is confusion about this where there is deceit in the church saying that it is a one-time event. Nothing more needs to be done. We rest absolutely in this knowledge. When in fact the truth is the work of redemption is ongoing throughout our entire lives. The multitudes had this same attitude. As soon as they heard the parables, they went home. They never tried to discover the truth of the parable and apply this truth to their lives. Many people are just part of the multitudes, and it's a small number that are true disciples. So what evidence can we find in the Bible to prove that the 144,000 and the bride are the same group of people? Well, it's really quite simple. Now, in Revelation chapter 21, John sees New Jerusalem, the holy city. It says in verse 2, "Then I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband." And God says to him, from verse 7, "He who overcomes shall inherit all things. And I will be his God, and he shall be my son. But the cowardly, unbelieving, abominable, murderers, sexually immoral, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars," which basically covers everybody who's not allowed themselves to be purified, "they all shall have their part in the lake which burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death." Then the angel takes John to see New Jerusalem, once again describing New Jerusalem as the holy city which is coming down out of heaven from God, and the angel also identifies New Jerusalem as the bride, the Lamb's wife. Twice John is shown that New Jerusalem is the bride of the Lamb. Now, all we now have to do is see that the measurements of the city that John is given here in chapter 21, where it is describing New Jerusalem, the bride of the Lamb, are made up of the number of people from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. Each side of New Jerusalem is said to be 12,000 furlongs. 12 tribes times 12,000 furlongs equals 144,000 furlongs. Verse 12 tells us that the wall measures 144 cubits. In Revelation chapter 7, we're told that each tribe has contributed 12,000 people. So it's very easy to understand, really. 12 tribes of 12,000 people equals 144,000 people. So the measurements of the city of New Jerusalem is made up of the 144,000 people from the 12 tribes of Israel. And it says, and he measured the city with a reed, 12,000 furlongs. Its length, breadth, height are equal, making it a cube. And a cube has 12 sides, 12 edges. Then he measured its wall, 144 cubits, according to the measure of a man, that is, of an angel. Right? So it's telling us here that the measurements are of a creative being, a man or of an angel. So it's not actually furlongs, it's the measurements of humanity. We also see that in Revelation chapter 11, where John is given a measuring reed to measure the holy place in the church. He's asking John to measure a people, not an actual temple, because the temple didn't exist. The temple had been destroyed. Okay, so the 144,000 true disciples of Jesus is also the bride of the Lamb. So for further and more in-depth studies on these topics, you can see these in my videos. One is titled, Who is the Bride of Christ? What the Church Won't Tell You. The other one is called Who is the Bride? Stunning New Revelation. God is looking for new wineskins. And the other one is the 144,000, the bride.